You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Writing Community Chat Show. I'm going to say this so many times you get sick of it, but yes, it's the weekend, we've made it, and we're very happy to be here, not only because we've got through a week of work and probably writing and fitting in our busy life, cleaning the dishes, doing the recycling, getting through the Monday to Friday, and getting to the weekend, because we also get to chat to an amazing new writer today, and me and Chris get to catch up as well. So first of all, if you're listening on the podcast, thank you. If you're watching this back, thank you. If you're tuning in live, thank you as well. Chris, how have you been? How has your week been?
Yeah, it's been a good week. Somewhat productive in various different avenues. So yeah, it's been good. Can't complain.
Yeah, it has. Productive is good. We've had a lot of conversations via voice notes, which is always a weird thing when people say, "What are you doing?" And I've got my phone to my ear. So Chris has sent me a message again, so that's why I'm looking like this. But yeah, it's good, and I do like it because it is more efficient. I never used to use it until you started messaging me like that. But yeah, it has been productive. I released a new book this week, Chris.
You did?
Yeah. Very excited. It's been going pretty well. I made a new trailer for it tonight, and if people don't mind, I'd like to play that trailer on the show today.
Yeah, sounds good. I've already got myself a copy of it, mate. It's on its way.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's going to be my first Cold Pod book review.
Well,
yeah,
yes. A bit of news for everybody. The Cold Pod is something Chris Hooley's been doing for quite some time, and in his journey of positivity, and he's been coaching me very well in the positive world. He has also convinced me. I stupidly suggested this for my birthday last month. That is what I wanted, is a Cold Pod, and it is coming and arriving this Sunday, 2 days away. So the stupid idea we came up with is Chris Hooley is going to do a book review in the Cold Pod, which roughly is about 3 minutes, if I'm right, Chris, in the Cold Pod.
Yep, 3 minutes.
Yep, and equally, if I can brave it, I will be doing a 3 minute or roughly a 3 minute advertisement for the show, who's on the show this week, in the Cold Pod as well. So you're going to see a lot of swearing, a lot of breathing heavy, and possibly pausing out from me, and book reviews from Chris Hooley. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it takes some getting used to, but after, I'd probably say the first 20 seconds, once you've got over that, you're good to talk.
Oh, trust me, I've tried the cold showers. 20 seconds does not. No, in the entire time, I'm like, it's freezing, and I make silly noises, and the swear words come out. It's ridiculous. My
tip would be get your shoulders in, because then when they're in, it makes it so much easier. You think it wouldn't be because you're more immersed, but it does make a difference.
So this is a question I've got for you then. Being someone who has experienced the Cold Pod, there's lots of benefits for this, for physical and mental health. And I want to know, has it affected your kind of creativity? Has it, going for a nice walk can often spark that kind of creative path. Has cold therapy done that for you?
No.
Fair enough. Yep.
No, it's not. But what it has done is it's helped me deal with more stressful situations, because the big thing about the Cold Pod is the breathing. And now when I find myself getting anxious or stressed about something, I find myself automatically taking deeper breaths.
Yes.
Which means I get more oxygen in, which means I start to calm down. And as someone actually commented in work today, they were like, "You are the calmest man I've ever met." And I was like, we do work in a high school, so that's quite a compliment.
Do you know what was really, really strange about that is, Chris? This week I've had almost the identical compliment by someone who's a bit older, who's lived a life in a hectic place, and he said, "I am the most laid back person he knows." Isn't that weird that we both had that weird compliment this week?
Yeah, but keep them going.
Yeah, by all means. Okay, so I'm going to do a shameless promotion and play the trailer that I've made for my new book. So if you're on the podcast, I apologize that you might obviously can't see this, but you know there's graphics to go with it, but you can hear it. So my new book is out, came out on the 1st. It's on Amazon for paperback and ebook. So this is my brand new trailer. Please let me know what you think, and if you purchased it, thank you so much. It's had a few sales already. I'm quite impressed by the response it's had. So thank you so much for those getting involved. And if you want to pick it up, please do so. Here's the trailer. Yeah, there it is. I like what I've made, but also at the end, that catchphrase, read it before it reads you, I'm still thinking, that doesn't really make much sense. But, you know, it's there.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
You can always tweak it, mate.
I can. Hello to Anna and hello to Halo. Thank you for tuning in. We know you lot are busy and spend your Friday with us. It's very special for us, so thank you so much. We will get our guest on, and hopefully you've got some great questions for our guest throughout the show and towards the end. So, Chris, are you ready for tonight's guest?
I am indeed.
Definitely. I am looking forward to this. So, let me introduce our guest, and then we can get into the great conversation that we're about to have. So, tonight we are diving into a world of murder, mystery, and storytelling with a guest who has mastered them all. Our guest is an award-winning writer, a former literary agent intern, and a ghostwriter whose work has appeared in Forbes, USA Today, VentureBeat, Entrepreneur, and Inc.com. But that's just the beginning. Katie Carlisle isn't just a talented murder mystery writer, she is also the co-host of a fantastic podcast, Our Relationship with Writing, where she and Anthony explore all things writing. And in a truly inspiring act of generosity, she donates all her book royalties to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, proving that storytelling can be a force for real world change. So we can't wait to hear about her journey, her writing processes, and of course, what makes a great mystery novel. So please welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show, Katie Carlisle. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. How's it going? How's your week been?
My week's been good. I actually went to Vermont over the weekend. My fiance and future stepson have never seen snow. So I took them up there to go experience that for the first time ever, and they loved it. It was so much fun. So we just got back on Monday, and so it's been a short week for me, but a productive one. I got a lot of things done. I'm pretty proud of myself. 4 days, and I knocked it out of the park. So go me. I'm patting myself on the back.
Amazing. Yeah, I saw your tweets this week about the book sales you made, and it's blown my mind. Absolutely incredible. So congratulations to that. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's it kind of blows my mind too, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm glad it's working.
Yeah. Oh my God. Halo says, I have family from VT, a beautiful state.
Oh yeah, it is a great state. I lived there for 4 years, and I miss it a lot. I cried like a baby when we got back on the plane to go back down to Florida. I was like, I don't want to leave. I don't like the heat.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm also kind of mind blown at the fact they've never seen snow. I live by the coast, and it's often never snowing, but I've seen it a few times.
Yeah, well, I mean, they live in Florida and they have all their lives, so I mean, it never snows down here. I think it snowed just the other week, but it was up in North Florida, and we're, way down south. So it doesn't seem like it would be all that distance between us, but it's probably like 13 hours away from where we live. So it makes a big difference.
That blows our mind again in the UK, because for me to travel to the north from where I'm fairly south, pretty much travel the whole UK in like 9 hours. But you take an incredible amount of time to get from place to place in the same state.
The US is so huge, and every state is so big. It's crazy. Like, it blows my mind, and I live here.
Yeah, it's incredible. So where you're from at the moment then, is there a writing scene where you are? Do you connect with other writers in your local area, or is it mainly like kind of like an online writing community vibe?
Yeah, it's mainly online, but it's cool because my fiance is a writer and an illustrator. He does mostly comic books and things of that nature. So it's really interesting. We share an office space, so we're always working on projects in the same room together. So that's a really interesting aspect that I've never had that in a relationship before. I've always been the one who's like, I'm gonna go hole myself away in a room for 9 hours, and I hope you're okay with that. But he's like very much on the same page, like, hey, I gotta take care of my projects, and I'm just gonna be in this room for the foreseeable future. So it's great though. It's cool. Like, we bounce ideas off each other all the time, and he's helped me so much plotting out 2 of the books that I have forthcoming, and he's helping me flesh out this one that I wrote about 1.5 years ago. It's the second book I ever wrote, and I'm trying to just edit the crap out of it before I publish it.
Definitely. I mean, you mentioned the comic work and his work as well, and I chatted to you before we started the show, and that's on display behind you, which I really highlighted as something that's pretty damn amazing. So how long have you been writing, and how long has your partner been writing?
I have been writing since the time I could hold a pen. I know that's like a very cheap answer, and people are probably like, oh yeah, right. But for real, I mean, it was to the point where my mom had me like tested to see if I was some sort of savant, because I had taught myself the alphabet using those blocks before I turned 1. And then by the time I was 2, I was reading my first book. And then by the time I was 3, I was like, give me a pen. I need to write things down. So it's just like crazy how that happened. But I've always known. I was just like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is, the career that I want to have, no matter whether it's writing the ingredients on the back of cereal boxes or writing books. I want to be writing. So that's always been in me. As far as Anthony, he's been writing comics with his best friend since high school. And they really just started kind of putting them all together and doing it regularly within the past few years. So it's been really awesome to see them kind of take off and watch them grow. And now they're putting out like new ideas, new comics. They're finishing up the one series that they had. So it's really cool. They do really excellent work together. They're a great team. So it's really fun.
So I think what I'm interested in that's really kind of jumping out at me in that kind of relationship with different writers, being kind of comic main lead compared to sort of mystery and thriller. Does either complement another in any sense, or do you kind of work independently?
I think we complement each other a lot, actually. There are a lot of times where, because even though he largely is in the comic book space, he does also have a novel that he is hammering out, and he put together like the first draft of it, and I read most of it. I haven't gotten around to finishing it. And now I'm like, I don't want to finish it because I know you're editing it and I want to read the new version. So it's really cool though, because we have a very similar way of thinking. And he really loves puzzles. So having that mentality really helps me when I'm putting together murder mysteries and psychological thrillers, and having that element of suspense like constantly woven within a story. It helps to have him there to bounce ideas off of, because he has that similar mindset as well. But as you pointed out, it's a little bit different. So the way I think about something, he'd be like, well, hold on a second. I got a plot hole for you that you might want to fill before you keep moving forward.
Nice.
So it's really great to have that, because he keeps me he makes it easier to spot those things before I get too in the weeds, and then it's too late and I have to do a lot of rewriting.
Yeah, that is really good to have someone like that. Yeah, amazing. We've kind of already touched on sort of where the writing came from in your journey, because clearly at a young age you were destined to be a writer. But we're going to play the first little video, which is the part 1 video, the road to writing. And we're going to find out how you got to where you are now. And obviously that's going through that process of being a young person to where you are now, and your sales, as I mentioned, what you're sharing on Twitter or X at the moment, are doing fantastically well. So we want to kind of discover that journey. So I'm going to play the part 1 video, and then we'll get into the road to writing. So here it is. So Katie, take us back, because obviously at 3-year-old you started writing, which is incredible to think about. But at some stage that would have to have transitioned into a more serious thought process for you. So do you remember what that was, and what were the biggest inspirations for you up until that point?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there were like 2 key moments that I remember, and one of them was right after my parents got divorced. I was around 7 when that happened, and obviously, as any young child would, going through that, it would be completely traumatizing, and I was just dealing with a lot of emotions that I really didn't understand how to process. And my grandfather had gotten me Harry Potter. And so he gave me this book, and he was like, just read this and maybe it'll, you'll like it or whatever. And he didn't really think anything of it. But to me, that was like, yes, I need this in my life right now. And I just, as every child in the 90s who's growing up with Harry Potter can relate to, I became completely obsessed. And I love those books so much. I spent all my time reading, not only that, but anything I could get my hands on. And by the time I would say around 10, I started writing poetry a lot. And I realized that it wasn't really something that I just wanted to do as a hobby. It was something that, around that time, it's, common for kids to be asked that question, like, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I started to realize, oh, I want to be a writer. Like, this is what I want to do. So I took it very seriously. I loved school. I was such a nerdy kid, if you can't tell by the giant glasses. I really wanted to make it a habit to do it every day and to do it really well. So I started to just write poems every single day. I had notebooks and notebooks that I would just fill and fill and fill. But I never really felt confident enough to write a full novel. Not until I was around 30. I had attempted it a few times before then. And every time I did, I just kind of let it go. I didn't have like an idea that was, soup to nuts kind of fleshed out. So I was like, I'm not going to do this. I did some short stories. I had them published in some literary magazines, and that felt great. But I was like, I want that. I want to write a book. Like, I know I have that in me. I know I can do it if I just give myself permission to do it. But I was going through a lot of, again, personal trauma. My dad died unexpectedly when I was 26. And he was like my biggest champion. And I loved him so much. And like losing him, I was like, oh, I don't even want to write anymore, because what's the point? Like, he's not going to be there to see any of it. And I lost that love for a while. And then I started to realize by not writing, I was dishonoring his memory, because he wouldn't have wanted that for me to just give that up. He always pushed me to write. A lot of other kids' parents were like, you have to do something more practical, like be an engineer, or, be a teacher or something like that. And but my dad was always like, no, do what you love and the money will follow eventually. Don't even worry about it. Like, you can do this. So he really pushed hard for me to follow that dream, and I'm glad that he did. So I started picking it back up again, and that's when I wrote my first book, Reasonable. And I had no plan going into it, just like every other time. But I was like, for a long time, whenever I tried to write a novel, I just had this in my head, like, I can't share it with anyone until it's completely done and ready. And so this time when I did it, I was like, okay, if you're going to do this, you have to do everything completely differently than you have every other time. So after I wrote every day, I would share what I had written with somebody and read it out loud. And that just kind of kept me going, because I wanted that rush of sharing something that I had written with somebody and hearing their reaction to it. So that kept me going back every day. And then at the end of 100 days, I had written my first book. And I was like, wow, I just did that. I can fucking do that again.
Yeah.
I just like kept doing it.
I love that. And there's a few things that jump into my head. And I've seen Chris noting down some things there. So I'm sure he's got questions for you. But going right back there to where you talked about, your parents' divorce, and, a lot of us have been through that. And we know you kind of stick your fears and your kind of frustration somewhere. Do you feel like your grandfather giving you the Harry Potter series was like an amazing outlet for you at that point, where you just got lost in that world? And then that was the reason why poetry came into your life, because that suddenly became a way for you to express your feelings as well. It seems in my mind like that could have been a really well-timed sort of distraction and outlet for you.
Absolutely. I mean, without a doubt, that's just, you hit the nail on the head. Like, in addition to that whole trauma, I did not have a good home life. It was not a happy childhood. So having books and escaping through that was very healing for me. And being able to not only digest all of these other worlds that people had created, but trying to explore doing that myself was such a welcome distraction from the things that I was going through. But not just a distraction, it helped me work through a lot of things that I'm sure if I didn't have that outlet, I'd still be struggling with. Obviously those wounds kind of stick with you forever, and you have to deal with those, on a day-to-day basis, but it's much less traumatizing and much less prevalent in my life than I feel it would have been if I didn't have that.
Yeah, nice. Chris, I'll let you get in there because I've just been chatting away. Have you got a question?
Yeah, one of the questions that I was going to ask you is, what was coming out during the poetry stage that you were in? What sort of emotions were you channeling there? And you said, obviously, when you wrote your first novel, that you didn't really have a plan. So again, was there an emotional sort of motive behind what it was that you were writing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For poetry, it was always grained in deep depression, anger sometimes. So like really heavy emotions like that I just, especially as a kid, I was like, I don't know how to handle this, so I am just gonna put it on paper. And then when my dad died, it took me almost 5 years to get to that point where I was comfortable with the idea of spending enough time with myself to write. And I didn't have a plan as far as like, they have the plotters versus the pantsers. I was very much a pantser. I had the idea. I knew what I wanted to do. And I was like, I don't want to get hung up on all the details. I just want to do this because I'm scared that if I don't, I never will. And so I just started like writing from that. And really just from writing from a place of wanting to do something for my dad. And like, even though he was gone, like in a weird way, to show him like, hey, like I listened to you. I did this. and I'm going to keep doing it. So, it was very healing. I didn't write from a place of like, anger or depression or anything. I was very focused and I kind of imagined him like in the room with me a lot during that process, and was like, just trying to imagine what his reaction would be to certain things. And like, would he like this is what I kept asking myself, because he always read my stuff. So I was always like, just in the back of my mind, I was like, what would Dad think of this? Would he like this? Is this cool? Yeah. All right. It goes in the book.
Nice. There's a question.
Sorry, Chris. I was going to say, has your process changed then, in terms of like you talked there very much about being motivated almost by pain? So how has that creative process changed for you, assuming that pain is no longer such a massive influence in your life?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Great questions. I think that, there's always that underlying pain, especially, for someone like me. I've been through a lot. I've been through a lot of crap, especially in the past like couple of years. It's been really rough. But I try to channel it in a way where it's not so chaotic anymore. I'm not writing from a place where like if I have those high emotions, it used to be that I would just go to the page and start writing, and it would be like the craziest nonsense that I'd ever come up with. And now I just kind of like, if I'm in that state, I can't even approach it. I have to cool off. I need to take a minute to refocus and, get my calm back. And then once I can, I'm able to get back to that and start doing it again. But I think one of the greatest lessons that I learned, and probably the greatest replication of that, is the fact that I did pants my first book, and that's the only reason why it turned into a trilogy, because it got away from me. And I was like, well, I don't want to do this again. I want to be more focused. I want to, have clear, concise, easily digestible ideas that can stand alone and leave an impact on a reader. So I started to plot it out. And I understand, you can totally achieve that going the pantsing route with no plan at all. But for me, I just kept digging myself little plot holes here and there, and then having to go back in and like stamp them all down along the way. So I figured that if I took the time to really plot it out and, build that outline from the beginning, I could do much better. And I've done that with every book since then. And I've written 6 total since June 2023.
Amazing. Love that. I'm going to jump in there, Chris, because this is a conversation that's going in really well, but we've not even scratched the kind of career in that aspect, but which is fine, and that's really good. But what I want to ask is, you mentioned something earlier that is intriguing me, and I want to know what advice you've got. Is that you mentioned that you kind of didn't have the confidence to even share your work with anybody, leading up to the kind of release of your first book, but then suddenly you had that inspiration to do so. So there may be very many people in that situation where they're stuck with that fear of sharing their work. What advice have you got for someone who is in that situation?
Take that leap. It's scary and it sucks, and there's no way around that. But you have to do it, because it's the only way. So here's the thing. I write for a living in addition to, writing for leisure. For creative pursuits. But one of the things I always tell my clients when I write, articles for them is like, I don't want to know what you liked. I want to know what you hated, because it's the only way that I'm going to get better. And if I don't hear that, it sucks. It's the worst thing ever, but you got to rip it off like a Band-Aid and just look at that wound for a little bit, understand what's infected, and then grab the medicine and apply it, because that's the only way that you're going to fix what you did wrong.
That's great advice. Love that. Yeah. Wow. Okay, cool. So we should nearly be moving on, but we need to kind of catch up with the career process here, because it's really interesting. So you've gone through your first novel. You created a 6, was it you said?
Yeah, 6 books
Yeah,
total.
6, up to the point where we are now, where you've become successful in terms of sales. And I can't remember the number, but you shared a tweet, or whatever it's called these days, saying that you've made really a decent amount of sales, in a couple of weeks. So do you feel like there's a reason for that success? And is that a case of kind of building your author profile, releasing 6 books so you've got a following base, or is there a reason you think that you started selling so many books in that case?
I've been trying to pinpoint this myself because I'm a little bit perplexed by it. It just sort of happened very suddenly, especially with I Know What I Saw. But I think that, reflecting on it, I'll say the biggest thing that has helped me is really building that audience on Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter because that's what it's fucking called to me.
Absolutely.
But I really only post there. I have social profiles on Facebook and on Instagram. I even have it on TikTok, and everybody's always like, "Oh, you gotta be on Book Talk. You gotta do this, gotta do that." And I'm like, no, you don't. Because this is another thing that I tell my clients, because in addition to, my copywriting, I will do social media marketing for them. And a lot of the biggest mistake that a lot of them make is they'll come to me and be like, well, I want to be on every social media platform that exists because that's how you reach the biggest audience. And I'm like, well, no, it's not. Because if you spend all of your time tending to all these little channels and you only really give a shit about one of them, so why are you wasting your time on all these other things that you don't want to be a part of? Because social media isn't just you post something and you hope it does well and you just kind of shout into the void. You have to be there and be an active member of the community and talk to other people and reply to their posts and have genuine engagements, because that's the only way you're going to get that back. And Twitter was the outlet for me where I recognized that there were a lot of people on there whose opinions I shared, some of which I didn't, but we still had great conversations and I learned from them. So it's been a really amazing place to find people within the writing community that I wasn't able to find when I was living in isolation in Vermont in a town of fewer than 1,000 people. So it was, difficult for me to make those connections, and having that on Twitter has really helped. I think almost all of my sales come from Twitter. I don't really run ad campaigns anymore. I don't have a strong network of friends and family who are there to support me. So all of that comes from people online who follow me there. And I'm so grateful for all of them, because it's crazy to me.
Yeah. That's how we got connected, and literally how this show started. And it was the love of the writing community on Twitter. So it is there, and it is there for people, as exactly as you said. And we've preached about this before, building your author profile in the sense that you're connecting with people as an author rather than pushing your book out there constantly. And you're a perfect example of that. So, it's great advice, and hopefully people will resonate with that and take it on board, because I'm victim myself to using multiple platforms when we used to use just the one. And it is the way to go, because you need to focus all your attention in that one place, and it does make sense.
Well, you got to treat it like a job, really. People think, oh, if I just post once a day, that'll be sufficient. And I'll just post something that's self-promotional so people know where to get my things. And I'm like, nah, that's not how it works. You have to invest at least a half hour of your time a day just to interact with people, and then you can post something or whatever. You can use the scheduling tools that are available to you. So if you're not able to find the time out of your day to post something, at least you have it scheduled so your feed isn't going stale. There's so many tools at your disposal. I really just take time at the beginning of each month to crank out 30 posts, and then I'll just schedule them all out. And then I'll pop in every now and then and put up some others in between. So it's padded around, and it's just, you can use the tools at your disposal. So you're not dumping all of your time and energy. Like, people would look at my feed and say, holy crap, she's always online. But I'm there. Yeah, I'm in June, but I'm also like, spending a lot of quality time with my family, getting a lot of work done, taking care of my dogs. Like, I got a life to live too. I'm not all on Twitter all the time.
So tell us this then, because there's a lot of people that, really struggling to deal with the social media marketing side of things.
Yeah.
You talked about at the start of the month, maybe doing 30 odd posts and then scheduling. A lot of people won't even know that that's a thing or how to do that. So before we move on, because we're going to have to, time is ticking over, and that's a great sign that we're getting good content here. What is that? What does that mean? And how can people kind of take advice from it and adapt that?
Yeah, absolutely. So on Twitter itself, I know they have embedded a scheduling tool. So when you go to post something, you can't do it on your phone. It's something you have to do on your desktop. But they do have the capability. It's looks like a little calendar icon at the bottom of your post screen. And you can click on that and literally just schedule the content to be posted at a later date or time. But if you don't want to use that tool, there are other free tools that you can use. Hootsuite is one of them. That's a great place that integrates with all social media platforms, so not just Twitter. So you can do it on Instagram and Facebook as well. The only one that is a little bit difficult to do that with is TikTok. That's more of in platform. You got to post it. You can't really schedule it out. I know Sprout Social did that, but that costs an arm and a leg. No offense to Sprout Social, I've used them for many years and they're terrific, but you don't need them. They cost too much money.
It's good to hear. It is good to hear, because that's real advice that people can actually use. So please, if you are going to do that, let us know if you are doing it and if you had success with it as a result. We'd love to know. We're going to have to move on, Chris, but before we do, any more questions on this part? We've hardly touched the career aspect of you, Katie, and that's frustrating because I know there's a lot more we can get out of this, but we're gonna have to move on to your book. But Chris, anything else before we do move on to the latest book?
Yeah, so whenever I hear the word depression, it's like a buzzword for me, and I always see it as an opportunity to share how somebody like yourself has gone from being at the jaws of depression to being successful, to writing multiple books, to having a good family life, and all these types of things. So I think my question is, what advice would you give to somebody from what you learned about your journey on how to claw their way back from depression?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's one that requires a lot of introspection, because it's different for everybody, right? Like, we all deal with things and deal with depression very differently. And for me, I needed to take time to identify exactly what it was that was the poison that needed to be sucked out. But I think what helped me do that the most was having a support network of people who I could reach out to and talk to. So I wasn't doing silly things like hurting myself or, falling into addiction and things like that, which were, it happened. Alcoholism was a thing. Self-harm was a thing. It wasn't fun for me. It took a lot to get to where I am and to be in a good place. But the thing that helped me the most really was my sister, Sarah. She's the best friend that I've ever had. I call her my sister. She's not, but I always say, when you know somebody for 20 years and you've seen each other naked, you're sisters. So she's just, she's my rock, and I tell her everything. And I really don't know what I would have done without her, especially within the past year. She was very instrumental in helping me get out of a domestic violence situation, which I had been in for 11 years up until that point. So it was, it takes a long time, especially for something like domestic abuse, which can be very crippling and very depressing. And it's something that a lot of victims deal with on their own because they don't feel comfortable going to somebody about that. they'd rather suffer in silence because they're embarrassed or they're scared or they don't feel like anyone's going to understand. And I definitely understand that. But you got to have that courage to kind of dig deep and say, well, what am I doing here? What kind of life do I want to live? Am I going to be able to do that in my current situation, or do I need to do something to change it? And if so, what does that look like for me?
Yeah. That's an amazing question and answer there. So thank you for
How
sharing.
does someone take that step?
That's another great question.
Chris, I was just gonna stay on it.
Yeah. No, I that's a great question. It takes a lot of courage. It's scary, right? It took me 11 years to take that step and reach out to my best friend who had already known really what was going on. And I said to her, I need help. Like, things aren't great. I know you know that. And like, I need help to get out of this. And together we found an organization called the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They have a vast network throughout the entire country with a lot of resources at the local level that can help people, access whatever it is they need. If they need a lawyer, if they need housing to get out fast, if they need a police escort, if they need therapy, if they need financial assistance after the fact that they've left. It takes a lot of strength and planning. That's a great point, Anya. It really does. You need to, not be so irrational about it. At first I was like, I need to get out of here. Like, it has to happen now. But I needed a plan. And that organization really helped save my life, because if I didn't reach out to them and understand what I needed to do to build that plan and get out of that situation, I really don't know where I would be right now. I don't like to think about it.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask, is about the hotline. But you obviously covered that, and Annie did make a point that her sister took 13 years to leave an abusive marriage, but we didn't know until she told us, which is a really kind of crucial thing. And you mentioned you had your sister, who's your supportive friend, that kind of knew it on the outside as well. But then, if you are that person, just that conversation might be the little icebreaker that needs to happen. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Obviously, it's a traumatic incident in your life, but it's been part of your story, which has led to where you are now. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah.
She says, I'm happy that you made it out and you're thriving.
You and me both. Oh my gosh.
This is like such a different conversation than I expected, in the way that we've had some amazing advice about your path so far, and some really good honesty about your mental health throughout the process, and your depression, and your domestic violence. Chris asked some great questions, and we've hardly touched on your career and your book, and we're way over both those segments. But what we're going to have to do, because it's been wonderful, and I wish a lot more conversations were like this, and me and Chris are definitely talking in the background, breaking news for everyone, about what do we call it, the mental podcast. It didn't quite sound that way, but about talking about mental health and depression on the side. So this has been wonderful. So we're going to play a little video, which is part 2, and then when we come back, hopefully you can pitch to us, I know what I saw.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that. So we're going to play a very quick trailer, part 2, coming right up. What's the story? So then, we've heard about how well this book is selling, and your reaction this book is having. So tell us what the story is, and hopefully we can get some questions in, and we can ask you some questions about the book as well.
Absolutely. So I Know What I Saw is a book about a girl named Eliza, who, typical teenager, kind of going through a lot of things. She's ostracized from her friend group because she thinks she saw a Bigfoot attack, and nobody believes her. But it's a little bit more than that, because the Bigfoot attack in question did result in a peer's death. And she witnessed this happen with what becomes her best friend, Simon. And the two of them kind of become obsessed with the idea of cryptids and Sasquatch lore in the area. And they develop a podcast about it and things like that. And everybody just kind of thinks that they're crazy. But Eliza has a secret about that night, because it's not just that she saw what happened, it's what she did before it happened. And she feels very guilty and responsible for this young girl's death. So as she's entering her senior year of high school, this event is 5 years behind her. And she comes to her English class and realizes that the brother of the girl who died is now going to be her long-term sub, because her English teacher is leaving because she's pregnant. She's due to have a baby. And she starts to freak out. She's like, oh man, what are the chances of this? He's going to know that like I'm somehow responsible for his sister's death. And then her worst fears are kind of confirmed when she gets a note in her locker that with a picture of the girl, and it says, I know what you did. And she's like, oh crap. What's going on? So now she's like, well, what did I really see? You know, what was this, a Sasquatch attack, or was this something else? And how soon can I prove it before I'm the next one who turns up dead? So it becomes, you know, this race to get to the truth before the next horrible thing happens in their town. And a lot of horrible things are happening in their town. So it's a spooky read. It's very suspenseful. It's a lot of fun. But it's also very sweet. You know, hers and Simon's relationship throughout is very endearing. They're very close friends, and they understand each other in a way that she doesn't really get. It's a very small town. When I wrote this, I was inspired by it takes place in a real town called Whitehall, New York, which is known as the Bigfoot capital of the Northeast. They do have a Sasquatch festival every year in September. The lore there is out of this world. The one man that I mentioned in it, Brian Goslin, he is a real person with a real story about what he saw on Aber Road in 1970 something, which he tells at the Sasquatch Festival every year. My neighbor knows him. They're good friends. And when I gave him this book, he was like, no way! So,
wow.
Yeah, like a lot of the things in this book are very much grained in reality. Chief among them being the Sasquatch lore, and everything, the way that town is laid out, the history of it, the way it looks, how many people live there. It's all very real. I drove through that town so many times. You'll feel like you are there.
I literally was going to ask about what research you did behind the folklore and, you know, kind of environment. So literally that's what you did. Is through actual knowledge of a local festival and experience of driving through there. I think that's incredible.
Well, one of the first things that I noticed when I moved to that area was there are Sasquatch statues everywhere. There are Bigfoot crossing signs everywhere. And I was just like, I'm looking around. I'm like, what the fuck is going on in this part of the country? Like, why do people believe this so much? And then I lived there for 4 years.
Yeah.
And I lived very deep in the woods. There wasn't, you know, very many people around. I mentioned before, it's a town of less than 1,000 people. My closest neighbor was about a quarter mile away. And I'll tell you, I love the outdoors. I've been outside a lot, you know. I appreciate the wilderness. That experience was very eye-opening to me because I didn't really believe in that kind of thing before I moved there. And then I moved there and I was like, okay, there's something freaky. There's something different out here.
Are you talking like about kind of the atmosphere or the vibes? Is it different than most places?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's unlike anywhere I've ever lived. I've lived a lot of places. I've moved like 30 times in 32 years. Yeah. And so I've lived a lot of different places. That place was very different.
Wow.
But the thing that always freaked me out the most was at night, you know, you go out in the woods and you're in the woods, like it is dark. And you hear a lot of things. You know, a lot of people think, oh, the woods so peaceful, so quiet. No, it isn't. It's loud out there. But every now and then it does get quiet. And that's when you're kind of like, oh, what's going on here? Like this isn't right. There should be noise and there isn't now. And on those nights when I would let, you know, my dogs out in the yard or something, without fail, they would go to one particular area in the woods and just stare out. And they would get frozen with fear to the point where, and these are hound dogs, you know, blue heeler, you know, they're like herding animals and stuff. They're not afraid of too much. But whatever they saw in that particular area, they didn't like. The one dog, she would get so scared that she would just freeze, and she would literally, without taking her eyes off of what she was looking at, back up until she felt comfortable enough to turn around. Then she tucked tail and ran back into the house. And I was like, I'm not going out there.
I'm going to lock the door right now.
I'm locking the door. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. That's incredible.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I don't know what's out there. I've never seen anything. I've heard some weird things I can't really explain. My dogs certainly feel like they've seen some things they can't explain. But yeah, I mean, that lore is alive and well up in that area. The woods are thick. There's, you know, who am I to say?
Yeah. My God, we're talking about so many good things. We're missing out. I should forget the structure. It doesn't need to be.
Throw it out the window. Fuck it.
Yeah. I know what I saw is being described as twisty and unpredictable, which is a great thing to be described as. You mentioned before about being a pantser transitioning into being more of a plotter. So with this kind of twisty and unpredictable tale, was it more kind of free flowing for you, or were you really thinking about putting those twists in there?
So I came up with the loose idea for this book about a year before I actually wrote it, because at that time I was still in the process of writing my trilogy. And I wanted to finish that first. I didn't want to leave readers hanging because they were already pissed off at me enough for the fact that the first two books ended in a cliffhanger. And I was like, oh, I got to get these done. So I did that first. And then by the time I was ready, I was just so ready to get this book out. And I sat and I literally just like circled around the bonfire in my backyard for like a good 2 hours, just like saying ideas out loud until the whole thing like made sense. And I was like, okay, this is how it's going to be. And then I went the next day, I wrote it all down, the whole outline. It was around like 6 pages long. Every chapter, every scene, every character, like their whole backstory and everything. So like it was tight.
Yeah.
I finished the whole thing in 17 days.
What?
To this, I've never written anything that fast or that like it's my favorite thing I've ever written. I love this book so much.
It sounds like, you know, most authors do this when they really have a story that they're invested in personally and they love, and it just comes out so well. And I think this sounds very much like one of those stories. And the fact that you had to think on it so much when finishing other work, it was like one of those things that you kind of really wanted to do but weren't allowed. So it was like constantly building tension and you just wanted to get to it. So the fact that you did it and you had all those ideas in your head, you just went, I'm fully invested, and it came out really well and very quickly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was anytime I had like a little inkling of an idea about it, I just like put it in a note in my phone and I just kept adding to it until it was time. And I looked back on it. It's like, okay, these are the pieces that work. These ones, not so much. Get rid of them.
Yeah, amazing. Right, we're going to have to like skip on because we're definitely overrun every part of this show so far. So we're going to get questions in from you guys. If you got questions in for our guests, please send them in now. I'll ask our staple questions, and I will ask them as we've lost our co-host. Maybe his internet. I don't know. He's disappeared. Maybe Bigfoot. Who knows?
Maybe Bigfoot. Who knows?
Yeah. But we'll get onto that. So part 3, community questions coming up. Get your questions in. I'll ask the staple questions, and we'll fit them in as quickly as we can in the best kind of way, but we'll get them in. Part 3 coming right up. So, if you could take an ending from any fictional story, whether that fictional story be a TV show, a film, or a book, and change the ending, what ending are you going to change and why?
I thought about this so hard when you sent me this question. I was like, oh, thank God you sent this to me ahead of time, because I really would not have known what to say. But I just finished reading You by Carolyn Kepnes. And for the most part, I liked it. You know, I wouldn't say it was my favorite book in the world, but the ending, I just felt like there was such a missed opportunity there, because the whole thing is told almost in second person. It's not true second person, but he is talking to a specific character the entire time, this woman that he is obsessed with. And then at the end of the story, I don't want to give anything away for anyone who hasn't read it, but at the end of the story, that he finds a new fixation. And so I really kind of expected that narration to subtly shift from the you being this one character to the you being this new character, but it didn't end that way. And I was like, why? It should have been this way.
It's a great answer. And Mr. Hooley will be gutted that he has disconnected, because I missed out on this interview, but Chris actually interviewed Caroline Kepnes, who wrote that You series. And he loved that. Yeah, so he would have loved to get involved in that answer, but it was a great answer. But yeah, why indeed? Don't change it up like that.
Yeah, no, I was just like, and it's no offense to her. She's a great writer. Like I said, I enjoyed it for the most part. It was just like that ending. I was like, man, it would have been tastier if it just kind of had that little subtlety. Like, obviously, this cycle is going to continue. Please.
I think most good books, though, do get that kind of debate going.
I think so too.
I love this ending or I hate this ending. That is literally the way a good ending kind of goes. But yeah, I don't know. Great answer. Okay, if you could take any character from fiction, and I'll also add on to this in a minute, from the world of fiction, and add that to one of your stories, what character from the world of fiction would you take?
Yeah, I've actually sort of done this. I'm working on a book right now called Killing at the Crown Royal, and the main character is very much inspired by the Schitt's Creek family, Alexis Rose. Like, she is Chloe forever. It's just every time I'm like stuck on like, what would this character do? I'm just like, well, what would Alexis do? Because that's what she's gonna do.
Nice.
Yeah, but she's just kind of like going around solving a murder that happens in the apartment complex that she manages.
Yeah, good answer again. The question I was going to add on to this, and it was what I wanted to ask earlier. I know what I saw obviously revolves around a protagonist there. Do you have an idea, if this was optioned for a TV show or a film, a dream casting you'd love to play your character?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I do. Well, so it's funny, like I don't have it for Eliza, who is the main character, but for Simon, I'm so bad with like actors' names and things like that, but I can tell you who it is. If you watch Cobra Kai, the boy who plays Dimitri, he is 100% Simon, but like that, or the lead character from Stranger Things, the boy with the shaggy black hair. Like, I think that he would make a great Simon. And then I think her name is Zendaya. I would love for her to play Kate. I think she makes a perfect Kate. And then for Carissa, it would have been oh my God, all I can think of is the name Regina George, but you know who I'm talking about, Rachel McAdams. But circa that time period, it would have been great. Now I'm really not sure who I would pick for her, but somebody just as like blonde and bitchy.
Yeah. The Cobra Kai Dimitri character was played by Gianni DeCenso.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. And the shaggy-haired one out of Stranger Things.
Yeah, he's the lead one. He's got like sort of like a hook nose and
was he the guy that played the guitar?
I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen that show. I really want to rewatch it because I know they're coming out with a new season soon. So I'm like,
yeah,
I wish I was better with actors' names.
I am so the same, honestly. If someone describe a film or an actor, I do exactly the same thing. You know, the guy with the hair and
yes.
the face?
The one who looks like this and does this.
Exactly. I think a lot of people are like that, and we should be proud. Okay, where am I going? Okay, we'll get a question in. We are over time, so I apologize for that if it's if you have plans. But a couple more questions we did. Okay. If you are looking back on your career, on your deathbed, this is generally Chris Hooley's morbid question, many years down the line, what would success look like to you?
You know, I think I'm living it. You know, I like where I'm at for the first time in my life, and it's kind of bewildering to me because I'm so used to that insecurity, that fear, that depression, and I don't feel any of those things anymore, and I feel very relaxed and just like happy. Anytime, like I don't get a ton of book sales. Would I love a ton more? Sure, absolutely. I would love to send $1 billion to the National Domestic Violence Hotline if I could. But I'm happy with that, what I'm able to do, and I'm happy with the people who do take the chance and the time to read my book. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't really get much better than that. I can't really complain when my career is writing and my hobby is writing, and I get to do both every day, all day long.
That is a fabulous answer, and I'm so happy to hear that you're in a good place. That is wonderful. I'll ask a question from Halo. Then I want to ask you about your podcast quickly, and then we'll find out some more information about you before we wrap this up. Halo says, thank you, Halo, always with the great questions. How do you make your tea and coffee? Do you microwave or kettle? Bear in mind, if you answer microwave, I might end this show right now.
Well, we might need to end the show. No, no. I make my coffee in a percolator. I'm not a tea drinker, but I drink my coffee black. And so I'll make it in a percolator, and then
that's all right.
You know, it'll stay there, and I'll I'll fill it throughout the day, and obviously it gets cold, so I will reheat it in the microwave, but I don't make it in the microwave.
No, I think that is fine. I think making tea in a microwave is psychotic, people. Please don't do it. Yes, for black coffee, she says. Yeah, I agree. But oh my goodness, when I found out people in America, Halo, Anya, a lot of Americans follow the show, and I learned this, and it shocked me and horrified me.
I mean, I know everyone in the UK takes their tea very seriously. I would be lying if I sat here and told you that I never made my tea in the microwave.
Oh, goodness. What is wrong with you people?
I'm in a pinch and I have a cold, which is really the only time I'm drinking tea. I am not sitting there and waiting for a kettle to brew on the stove. I'm sorry. I need it now.
Halo, we've disagreed with pizza on pineapple. No. Pineapple on pizza. Yes, and microwaving now. So please, enough of the disagreements. Okay, this has been an absolutely wonderful chat. Honestly, it's been like a breath of fresh air to hear the honesty and your story as a person and your sort of mental health and your books. And it's something that, like I said, me and Chris have been very open about in our shows recently. And I think it's something that a lot of writers deal with. A lot of creative people kind of deal with depression. And it's been lovely to hear that your story has been, shared with us, and the fact that you feel like you're in a really good place, and that you're doing such a great thing by supporting the domestic hotline as well, which I think is wonderful. So thank you for that. But before we do wrap this up, where can people find more information about yourself, and where can they buy I Know What I Saw? Because it's a wonderful sounding book and people need to pick it up.
Yes. So you can go to my website at www.ktcarlisle.com. That's KTCARLISLE. That is me. I am also on Twitter predominantly all day long at KT_Carlisle. And you can find I Know What I Saw at pretty much any major bookstore. I know it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. I think I saw it on Walmart even. So it's set up through Ingram Spark. So it's pretty much available like anywhere you buy books. You should be able to find it. And if you can't, my DMs are open on Twitter. I really don't care. People DM me all the time. If you really need the link to somewhere you can't find it, let me know and I'll direct you there.
Yeah. We will share that. We will. But also, again, I'm just skipping on all the time because we're a bit hectic in this right now for all the good reasons. Tell us about your podcast, because it is definitely within the realms of this podcast. I'm sure people will love to check that out. So could you let us know about that a little bit, please?
Yeah. Our relationship with writing is a show on YouTube that I do with my fiance, Anthony. And we just kind of talk about all things writing related, whether you're somebody who wants to query, be traditionally published, or you're interested in self-publishing and want to understand more about the processes involved in that, or you want to just get into the nitty-gritty on like what writing is, what the rules are, how to plot out a book, so we kind of talk about all of those things there. It's a different topic every week. We skipped this week because of vacation, so everyone can calm down. Don't yell at me. We'll be back next week.
Amazing. Yeah, brilliant. So is being really cheeky here, is there a date for the wedding?
Yes, there is. So Anthony and I share a birthday, which is
No way.
so wild. Yeah, so we are going to get married on our birthday next year on January 15th. So
what?
Yes.
My birthday's January the 13th.
Stop it right now. You're kidding.
Yeah. I've got twin boys who are January the 14th, and then you're the 15th.
Oh my God, get out of here. That's insane. Oh, that's amazing.
Go on for the Capricorns. Yes, we're the best.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, congratulations, and have a great wedding when that comes around. But also, we will be keeping tabs on your books and your releases. We will share the heck out of it on social media, on Twitter, of course. It is Twitter. We agree on that one. And thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And yeah, well done, Halo, for subscribing to the show. We will do the same. And,
thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Fantastic guest. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you all next week with another show on Valentine's Day, which is the 14th, next Friday. So have a great weekend. Look after yourselves and stay safe, most of all. But good writing. We'll see you all very soon. Bye.